I mean, you're barely ever going to find an argument on the internet that isn't exactly this. That's exactly what those arguments are. That's almost all they ever are. Those internet arguments, arguments in the comment section and so forth. I mean, good night. I barely ever open X. I barely ever open Twitter at all because it's the most obnoxious venue for this type of thing, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think there's been a time that I've opened that app or opened that website and I don't end up blocking people. SubhanAllah, whenever I open X, it's like I lifted up a rock to look at the slithering filth underneath it. Just a bunch of biting, stinging, pinching, poisonous vermin crawling all over the place. SubhanAllah. The full-blown infection is on full display on that platform. Not that platform exclusively, obviously, but in my opinion, from what I've seen, it's the most egregious. Listen, do you know that you can actually instantly identify, SubhanAllah, instantly you can identify when someone is an American or someone is a Westerner by nothing but the bad manners and nothing but the hostility in their comments, by just the way that they interact. There's a stench to American and Western discourse that is immediately recognizable. It's noxious. I mean, the hostility and the aggression just radiates from every word. But it's like I was talking about earlier, about the hypocrites, about the munafiqeen, how they lurch immediately into rude behavior. They attack, they insult, they vilify, they slander, they mock, they denigrate you. They denigrate people. And they don't even work their way up to it. They're like that right from the outstart, right away. And you see, this has been normalized. This has been normalized on social media. I mean, I've had people call me every name in the book. They've called me all kind of things, every insult, every slander that you can think of. And then I'm asked by them or by someone on their behalf to debate them. And there are people who actually do it. You've got people engaging with people who talk to them in the most disrespectful, the most shameful, the most insulting fashion imaginable. And they'll just still keep going back and forth with them online. No, you don't talk to people like that. No, you can't insult someone and then expect them to engage with you. But you see, this is what I'm talking about, the provocation, the baiting. And it never has anything whatsoever to do with the topic or the issue that they're using as a vehicle for the provocation. No, they're just trying to validate their own condition by spreading that condition to you. That's the whole point of this, by getting you to respond in kind. When what you're supposed to do is quarantine them. That's what you're supposed to do. You're going to talk to me like that? You're going to talk to anyone like that unprovoked? You understand? Unprovoked. You're going to just right out the gate. You're going to be aggressive. You're going to be insulting right from the get-go. No, you're infected. You're infected. That's that Westernism talking. Because nobody's fitrah treats people like that. So you get blocked. You get blocked. That's what you have to do. You understand? Don't engage at all. You have to normalize not normalizing disrespect. If someone insults you, they have lost the privilege of conversation with you. They've lost the privilege of interaction with you. I've told you before, you need to erect your partitions. You need to erect partitions around your discourse and gatekeep that with rigid discipline. But watch how they do. Watch how they'll do. When you do that, oh, you don't believe in free speech? You don't tolerate other opinions? You don't have an open mind? Oh, that pathogen tries very hard to get to you. They'll try every which way to get to you. See how they bait you? They try every which way to try to pull you into the muck of their own condition. But that's all that they're doing. You have to understand that that's what they're doing. They're not having, or they're not trying to have, a serious discussion with you at all. They're trying to have you agree to have an unserious exchange with them, to just trade insults, to validate the way that they are behaving as acceptable. No, it's not acceptable. Look, there's a level of trust that is involved when you agree, when you accept to engage in conversation with someone who is outside of arm's length from you. Because being within striking distance used to be all the insurance that you needed to guarantee that people were going to act right. You understand me? So if I'm going to communicate with you remotely, online, I cannot reach you. I don't know where you are. Very often, I don't even know what your real name is. Okay, so you're already on thin ice. Because I have to trust now that you're going to act like you have sense. And I don't even know you. I don't even know you. I can't see you. I don't know who you are or where you are. And I can't do anything about it if you decide to act a fool. Okay? Therefore, if you abuse that trust by insulting and being hostile, precisely because you know that I can't reach you and knock your teeth out, then you're completely canceled from having any future conversation with me. And yes, I said that on purpose, the threat of violence on purpose. Because why? Because again, violence is at the core of the Western identity. So the prospect of violence, or the absence of the prospect of violence, is what can change their behavior. There's literally only maybe two or three things that can reliably regulate their behavior, and morality isn't one of them. Ethics isn't one of them. Principle isn't one of them. No, the only things that will regulate their behavior, that will modify their behavior or give them cause to act with any restraint or respect whatsoever, is either sex or money or violence. Yes. If they think that they can get access to sex or get access to money, then they will act differently. And if they think that they could get physically hurt, then they'll act differently. And if none of these things are possibilities for them, then they'll show you their worst possible behavior. Yes, they will. That's what you see. If they know that they're not going to get either paid or laid or slayed, then there's going to be no restraint whatsoever on how they act. So I'm telling you that when you find yourself tapping away angrily on your keyboard to try to respond to someone, just stop. Just stop and hit the quarantine button. Block them. That's the quarantine button. Protect yourself and preserve your dignity and contain that infection. And the same goes for the people online who opine about things about which they have no knowledge. I mean, I've already talked about that many times. If you talk about things that you don't have knowledge about, you're a liar. I've already talked about that many times. But honestly, there are so many ways that Westernism manifests online. It's almost as if the internet is a magnifier. It's almost as if it's an amplifier of the disease, because obviously people act in all kinds of ways online that they would never act in real life. But that just exposes, actually. That exposes what they would otherwise be trying to conceal face to face. It's like how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that what they have already said is bad enough, but what they're holding in their hearts is even worse. What they're holding in their hearts is even worse. Well, on the internet, this type of person is just pouring their heart out all over the place. This is why I say that you have to know that there is the condition and there is the person. And as long as the person has that condition, then you're not going to be able to have an honest interaction with them. You're never going to be able to have an honest interaction with them. That's the truth. You're never going to be able to convince them. You're never going to be able to get them to come around. You're never going to be able to get them to see reason. You're never going to be able to get them to see the light or anything like that, because you're not talking to a pure mind. You're talking to an infected mind, and you're talking to a heart that has been sealed. I mean, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide them and maybe He won't, but you will not. So the only thing that you can do is to actually try to recognize that condition when you see it and deal with it accordingly. Now, I can already anticipate how some Muslims are going to react to what I'm saying, because when I'm saying that you cannot reach these people, this gets into the area of da'wah. Now, I've said repeatedly that I am not a da'i, and I mean it. I'm not a da'i. That's not what I am. That's not what I'm interested in. But yes, in terms of da'wah, even your da'wah has to adhere to the reality that I'm talking about, in my opinion. Because first of all, I'm not saying anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't already tell you. You do not guide who you love, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides whom He wills. Allah has to put the hidayah in someone's heart. This isn't something that you and I can do. Like I say, we can remind people, we can advise people, we can advise and remind each other after the guidance has already entered your heart and you stumble. But Allah's guidance is Allah's guidance, and it's not ours to distribute. You understand? So you have to reconcile the obligation of inviting to Islam with the fact that you do not guide anyone to Islam. Allah guides whomsoever He chooses to Islam. So you are required to invite. You are required to teach about Islam, but you are also required to understand that you are not going to bring anyone to Islam by your teaching or by your preaching or by your outreach or whatever the case may be. And we're talking about a people, like I say, who cannot be moved by words, cannot be moved by instruction, cannot be moved by advice or warnings or what have you. They're not moved by any of that. They're immune or allergic to all of that. But look, da'wah is not a process of persuasion. This is a misunderstanding that a lot of people have. You act like if you can just craft your argument correctly, present the evidence convincingly, use the right tone, use the right framing and what have you, get the right entry point, then you can bring someone to Islam. You understand? You think that you can take responsibility for the outcome. Not only is that not theologically correct, it's also practically dangerous and potentially disastrous for you, because it means that you are now dealing with someone whose condition has metastasized. You're dealing with someone whose condition has metastasized, and you're going to keep trying to find that magic argument, right? You're going to keep trying to adjust your approach. You're going to exhaust yourself trying to cure someone whose illness is beyond your capacity to cure. And in the process of doing all of that, you expose yourself to the possibility of transmission because you're going to start framing Islam in their terms. You understand? You're going to start tailoring your da'wah according to their frameworks, according to their paradigms. You're going to start quoting their books. You're going to start quoting their thinkers, quoting their philosophers, using their references and so forth. You're going to start adopting their whole way of thinking, all supposedly to try to get them to accept your way of thinking. Well, that's obviously self-defeating. That's not going to work. You're going to start telling them that our health is the same as their sickness, that our morality is the same as their immorality. Oh, you believe this? We also believe this. Muslims were the first feminists. Muslims were the first red pillars and so forth. Islam is socialist. Islam is capitalist. Islam is communist. Islam is democratic. You've heard all these things before. You know what I'm talking about. It's the Islamization of Jahl. The Islamization of Jahl. You know, years ago, there was that movement, right? The Islamist movement. They called it the Islamization of knowledge. The Islamization of knowledge. Well, that very quickly became the Islamization of ignorance. And that change happened in the West. And it's no coincidence that it happened in the West. The Islamization of the infection, the Islamization of the disease, the Islamization of the disease that only pure Islam can cure. No, da'wah is fundamentally the clash between truth and falsehood. That's what it is. And what you and I are supposed to do, what our obligation is just to convey, full stop, to name things accurately, to call what's wrong, wrong, and what's right, right. That's the extent of your charge. The outcome is not your department. And so if da'wah is just conveyance, not persuasion, not conversion, then da'wah actually looks a great deal like what we've already been discussing. You understand? Because when you maintain your fitrah in the face of everything that seeks to corrupt it, in the face of Westernism, when you refuse to be destabilized, when you refuse to accept the distorted narrative, when you refuse to argue on their terms, when you refuse to lose your composure, you are presenting, by contrast, the reality of what health looks like. And when you name things accurately, when you call the wrong action by what it is without flinching and without cruelty, you're making the truth available to people. When you hold your ground epistemically and you hold your ground morally against someone whose entire operating logic is to make the truth seem inaccessible and to make the truth seem murky, that is da'wah. Da'wah is the clash between truth and falsehood. It's a clash. It's not a negotiation. It's not trying to seek middle ground between the truth and between falsehood. It's the truth standing in the presence of falsehood without blinking. And your protection of your own fitrah is not a retreat from that clash. It's the substance of that clash. You cannot represent health while being infected. You cannot present the pure alternative to Westernism when you allow yourself to get dragged into their epistemic mud. So that's the vigilance that we're talking about. This isn't self-preservation at the expense of da'wah. It's da'wah in and of itself. Yes, I say you can make da'wah by blocking people. You can make da'wah by not engaging with people. You can make da'wah by refusing their invitation to infect yourself with their condition. You can make da'wah by setting higher standards, by insisting upon proper behavior. So yes, you have an obligation to invite to Islam, but you invite by being what you are, by saying what's true, and by leaving the guidance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The person who cannot be reached by your words is not a failure. That's not you failing in your da'wah. That's just da'wah meeting its natural limit. You have conveyed, khalas, you conveyed. And what happens next is between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.